Probably 15 years or so ago, I read somewhere that the most important marketing-related decision that you'll ever make is what you name your company, your product, or your service. And at the time, I thought it was an interesting idea, but I have to admit I didn't actually believe it. Nonetheless, I started looking into it more and understanding some of the concepts better. And the more I put certain uncommon naming practices into play, the better marketing results I was getting. And from that point on, I've been totally hooked. I have to admit, I am obsessed with naming. Because what I've learned is that as the foundation of your marketing, a name isn't just a name. I learned about the different ways to name things. I learned that there are different types of names. And I found that the kind of name you choose can actually affect the way in which all your marketing gets done. And of course, that in turn affects your bottom line and results. I also learned that there's no right or wrong way to name something, but there are definitely ways to name things that are better and stronger than others. And that's why I'm thrilled to bring you Diablo, the world's most dangerous naming series. Diablo is dangerous because it works. You can really influence people's preferences for your products and your services if you follow these proven processes. So you have to promise to only use this power to do good. And I know that some of what I'm going to show you here goes against a lot of marketing best practices. In fact, a great deal of it may seem counterintuitive at first, but I'll show you how it all makes sense. And yeah, I get it, very few people believe that the name you choose is the most important marketing-related decision you'll ever make. But in my experience, I found that it is 100% true. So if you put these naming lessons into practice, you too will see naming and branding in a whole new way, and I bet you'll even be blown away with the results that you get. So go ahead, check out Diablo, the world's most dangerous naming series, right here on Mustard. Have you noticed when people come up with an idea for a new product or a service, the first two things that they tell you are what it is and what it's called? They're like, I have a great idea for a new XYZ, and it's called, and then they tell you whatever name they think is best. I love when I hear that because it shows how even people who aren't marketing professionals recognize that the foundation to marketing is describing what something is and then identifying it by name. Even before a value proposition is put out there, they answer two basic questions. What is it and what's it called? And as the foundation to marketing, it's extremely important to get these two things right because when you're marketing anything, your ultimate goal is to build a brand. And in order to build a strong brand, you have to have a solid foundation. That's true whenever you build anything, right? Foundations of skyscrapers are built on solid rock. You have to do the same if you want to build your brand as high as it can go. So the question is, how do you do that? Well, there must be a bunch of different ways because if you stop and look around, you'll see that there are all kinds of different brand names out there. In fact, next time you're on your way home from work, be aware and check it out. You'll see different kinds of brand names and many different structures to them. Now later in the series, I'm going to show you the different structures or types of names. Actually, they're called naming conventions. There are 4 of them, and I'll show you exactly what they are, how they work, and how they're most often used. And you don't have to be a seasoned marketing professional to understand these naming conventions. In fact, after you learn the naming conventions and you look around with a trained eye, you'll probably come to believe, like I do, that most marketing professionals must not know them and how they work. But for now, we can start by asking ourselves a few quick questions. The first is, should we name something or not? I'm continually surprised that this question has to be answered, but Because we never work in a vacuum, there are usually multiple people who are responsible for and have influence on the marketing. And invariably, there will be at least one person on the team who says something along the lines of, "We don't need to name it, we can just call it what it is." Now, this is usually said by someone on the team who isn't a marketing professional, but every now and then it's said by someone who's responsible for the marketing. And when I've heard that from a marketing manager, it's usually by someone who has backed their way into a marketing role. You can quickly find that a company is actually anti-marketing when you see that the majority of, if not all of, the people in the marketing function aren't formally trained as marketers. In B2B, I see it all the time, and having non-marketing professionals in marketing leadership roles is a big reason marketing is generally considered to be not very good in B2B environments. Ultimately, marketing is a language issue, not an engineering one. But make no mistake, marketing isn't an art. And the truth is, anyone who describes marketing as an art is just admitting that they don't really understand how it works. Anyway, the first question that has to be answered is, do we name something or not? And my answer is always, if it's worth selling, it's worth naming. And that's not just for products, it's for services and internal programs, or like I said, anything worth selling. The next question that has to be answered is, do we brand it or not? The concern here usually revolves around, do we create a brand identity or not? But the thing is, you can't not brand something. This goes hand in hand with the first question, but in fact, you can't do one without doing the other, because once you identify something out loud, you've created a brand. Calling something what it is known as literal descriptive naming. That's one of the 4 naming conventions I mentioned earlier. We'll go into more detail on it later, but literal descriptive names are also known as generic brand names. That's why lemon lime soda from your local grocery store is every bit as much of a brand as Sprite. So there's no way around it. Once you identify anything and put it into conversation, once you've spoken it out loud, you've created a brand. But yeah, if it's worth selling, it's worth understanding this process and doing it as best possible every time. So now that you understand that you can't not name something, and once you've identified it out loud, that you've created a brand, then the next logical question is, so what's the best way to name something? And that's where we'll start lesson number 2 of Diablo, the world's most dangerous naming series.